This is just a very short piece of cine film taken by Ted Wraight, the builder of Sittingbourne, in 1937. The film was shot in colour, although not much colour remains today, at Eastchurch, which less than 30 years earlier had seen the first controlled flight by a British pilot on British soil and is considered the birthplace of British aviation. But that's another story. Empire Day itself had started at the beginning of the century and was rebranded Commonwealth Day in the 1950s. Empire Air Day was created in 1934 to foster interest in aviation and also to help recruitment for the RAF, with the international situation steadily moving towards war. In 1937, as in previous years, RAF stations all over the country opened their gates and put on a show for the public. RAF Eastchurch on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent was home to the RAF's Armament and Gunnery School and to No. 33 Squadron, which was armed with Hawker Hart and Hawker Hind two-seat bombers. On this day, the local Sittingbourne newspaper promised there would be enthusiastic RAF guides, over 30 planes of various types in operation or on view, and a demonstration of bombing. There was to be a camera gun exhibition and a Hart and a Hawker Fury giving an exhibition of air firing at a towed target. There would be demonstrations of high and low dive bombing, supply dropping and individual aerobatics. One of the most attractive sights, it promised, would be the air combat between an Overstrand bomber and 3 Furies. We don't have the Overstrand on the film, but they looked like this. Formation flying would illustrate defensive formation flying, and finally an attack by the Hinds and Harts using guns and bombs. As we can see, various aircraft were lined up for the public to view close up. Something that attracted a lot of interest was this bomber, possibly a fairy Swordfish. We'll await the experts' opinions on this one. It is surprising how fast technology was moving, and the Swordfish, if indeed that's what it is, only came into service with the Fleet Air Arm in 1936 and was considered by some to be effectively obsolete by 1939. However, they were still built and used well into the war and acquitted themselves well at such battles as those at Narvik, Taranto and against the Bismarck. The aircraft you see here is a 4-engined S-22 Scion Senior built by Short Brothers at Rochester in 1935. Only 6 of these were built. Later in 1937, this aircraft was flown by Flight Lieutenant Harold L. Piper, a New Zealand test pilot for Short Brothers, in the 1937 King's Cup race, but it was eliminated in the first round after 1 day. In 1938, the aircraft was leased to Jersey Airways for the summer season and then was sold at the end of the year to the Iraqi Petroleum Transport Company Limited of London, and it was re-registered as such in 1939, and the aircraft was based at Haifa in Palestine. In February 1942, the aircraft was taken on by the military, probably by the RAF in the Middle East. It is recorded as destroyed and written off as a result of enemy action at Haifa, Palestine on the 22nd of September 1943. This 2-engined monoplane is an S-16 Scion II, built by Short Brothers at Rochester for Adelaide Airways of South Australia. It first flew in 1935 and was shipped to Australia. It crashed in 1936 and was then shipped back and rebuilt at Rochester. After this appearance at Eastchurch, it was registered to Arabian Airways and sent to Aden. The aircraft crashed on takeoff in December 1937, and that, I think, is the end of the story. Here we see the Hawker Hart 2-seat bombers of 33 Squadron. 33 Squadron recently returned from duties in Egypt and then Palestine. These are, I believe, the Hawker Fury fighters lined up for takeoff. And the Furies, I believe, coming into land. This is the formation flying that we were promised as a defensive tactic, so presumably these are the Hart and Hind bombers. This flight lieutenant seems happy enough. With hindsight, the RAF seems woefully ill-equipped for what was to come, pitting some of these biplanes against the monoplanes of the Luftwaffe, and I do wonder how some of the servicemen seen in this film fared over the next 8 years. The land at Eastchurch became a government prison and is today the site of HMP Swaleside, HMP Stamford Hill and HMP Elmley.